This is the Premier League points totals for all teams over the last 4 seasons. If we take away the big 6, this is the table. What stands out? Well, judging by the fact you've already clicked on this video, you know where I'm going with this. Brighton are 3rd, behind Saudi-backed Newcastle and the historically big club Aston Villa. But how? How does a club with one of the smallest budgets in the league, which was playing in the lower division just over 10 years ago, survive, not even just survive in the Premier League, but actually thrive, finishing 6th in 2023 and qualifying for Europe for the first time ever? The secret isn't about flashy signings or billionaire owners. It's all about data, planning, and a game-changing system. Brighton figured it out, and today we're diving into their success story. To understand Brighton's rise, we've got to look back at their history. They faced financial struggles and lower league mediocrity, hitting rock bottom in the mid-90s, homeless, broke, and nearly vanishing. Everything shifted in 2009 when lifelong fan Tony Bloom took the reins. A pro gambler and data whiz, Bloom didn't just save Brighton, he transformed them by outsmarting rivals instead of outspending them. Now, Bloom isn't your average club owner. He's a poker champ who applied his gambling expertise to football. Behind the scenes, he and his team crafted a unique recruitment model to spot overlooked players, much like football's version of Moneyball. Take Kaoru Mitoma for instance, signed for under $3 million from Japan, who adapted to Belgium before shining in the Premier League. Or Moises Caicedo, who they snagged for under $5 million from Ecuador, later sold to Chelsea for a then British record fee of £150 million. And let's not forget Alexis McAllister, who was picked up for $7 million and then sold to Liverpool for 5 times that. This isn't just luck, it's a well-oiled machine. Brighton's recruitment team uses advanced metrics to find hidden gems. People throw around the term Moneyball, but what does it really mean? At Brighton, it's not just about signing players for cheap and selling them for a profit. It's about using the advanced metrics, data analysis, and an almost scientific approach to find value in places where others see none. Let's start with Kaoru Mitoma. On paper, Mitoma wasn't a standout prospect. Before joining Brighton, he was playing in Japan's J-League, which is hardly the first destination for top European scouts. But Brighton's recruitment team saw something that others didn't. Mitoma's scouting report didn't just look at goals or assists. It analysed his off-ball movement, decision-making, and most intriguingly, his dribbling ability. Brighton's data analysts use metrics like progressive carries, which track how far a player can advance the ball while maintaining control, and 1v1 success rate, measuring how often a player can beat his defender. But here's the twist. Mitoma wasn't just skilled at dribbling, he had studied it. As part of his university thesis in Japan, Mitoma strapped a camera to his head and analysed how he could manipulate defenders' positioning through body feints and subtle movements. Brighton recognised that this unique psychological approach to the game made him a perfect fit for their system, where exploiting space is the key. The result? Mitoma wasn't just a cheap signing, he became a player capable of breaking down the Premier League's toughest defences, all for under £3 million. Now let's talk about Moises Caicedo. When Brighton signed him for less than $5 million from Ecuadorian club Independiente del Valle, he was barely known outside South America. But Brighton didn't just stumble across him, they found him using a meticulous scouting process that combined traditional techniques with cutting-edge data analysis. Brighton's model emphasizes actionable metrics. For Caicedo, this included defensive duel success rate, how often he wins challenges in midfield, progressive passes, measuring his ability to break opposition lines with forward passes, press resistance, how effectively he can retain possession under pressure. Caicedo excelled in all these areas. More importantly, Brighton's scouting team noticed that his game mirrored elite midfielders like N'Golo Kante in terms of reading the game and covering ground. But where others saw raw potential, Brighton saw a ready-made Premier League player. And here's the kicker, When Brighton signed him, they knew he wouldn't need to start immediately. Their system is built on patience, allowing young players to develop through loans or limited minutes before being unleashed. Fast forward 2 years, and Caicedo became the league's most sought-after defensive midfielder, eventually sold to Chelsea for a record-breaking £115 million. So how does Brighton's Moneyball system actually work? Here's the blueprint. Data mining. Brighton scout leagues and regions that are undervalued, places like Japan, South America and Eastern Europe. They collect massive amounts of data, analysing everything from passing accuracy to psychological traits. Unique metrics. Brighton focus on metrics that others often overlook. For example, expected threat or XT, measuring how a player moves the ball into dangerous areas. Packing rate, how often a player bypasses opponents with passes or runs. Pressure regains, tracking how quickly a player wins back possession after losing it. Psychological profiling. Brighton don't just assess football ability or technical ability, they assess personality. Will this player thrive in Brighton's system? Can they adapt to a life in the Premier League? For instance, Brighton discovered that McAllister had strong mental resilience, which is crucial for adapting from Argentina to England. Risk and reward. Brighton's model accepts a higher risk threshold. By targeting younger, unproven players, they know that some won't work out, but when they hit the mark, like with Matoma and Caicedo, the rewards far outweigh the risks. But finding great players is just half the battle. The other half is knowing how to use them. And Brighton have been blessed with managers who excel at just that. Under Graham Potter, Brighton developed an identity of possession football with an emphasis on fluid movement and positional versatility. Players weren't just confined to one role, and instead they were encouraged to think like chess pieces, adapting to the flow of the game. When Graham Potter left Brighton for Chelsea in 2022, many believed that the club's fairy tale story might come to an end. After all, managers are the lifeblood of clubs like Brighton. You lose the coach and the carefully built system can easily fall apart. But in came Roberto De Zerbi, who didn't just maintain Brighton's style, he enhanced it. With De Zerbi, Brighton became more aggressive, employing intricate build-up play and pressing systems that turned games on their head. De Zerbi brought something unique to Brighton, a style that married meticulous planning with attacking freedom. His philosophy revolves around 3 key principles. Controlled build-up play. Brighton under De Zerbi became one of the best teams in Europe at playing out from the back. The players weren't just hoofing the ball under pressure, they were finding intricate passing lanes to break the opposition press. Stats back this up. Brighton's pass completion rate in their own defensive third jumped to one of the highest in the league under De Zerbi. It's no coincidence that players like Lewis Dunk, known primarily for their defending, started racking up passing metrics that rivaled some of the Premier League's top midfielders. Exploiting space. De Zerbi emphasizes creating and exploiting space. His team's positional play ensures that there are always options, no matter the scenario. This is where Brighton's Moneyball signings come in. Players like Matoma and Pervez Estupinian, who excel at stretching the field, became integral to this system. Relentless pressing. De Zerbi's Brighton press high but smartly. Instead of aimless running, the team's pressing is calculated, designed to force opponents into predictable errors. Metrics like high turnovers leading to shots skyrocketed under his management. One of De Zerbi's standout innovations was the midfield overload. Rather than relying on a static midfield structure, De Zerbi encouraged fluidity, with midfielders constantly rotating to create numerical advantages in key areas. Take Pascal Gross for example. Traditionally a midfielder, Gross had been deployed as a right back, an inverted fullback, and even a holding midfielder. Under De Zerbi, players aren't confined to positions they're given, they have the freedom to solve problems on the pitch. This adaptability makes Brighton incredibly difficult to defend against. Opponents can't predict who will attack from where, and their ability to switch the play quickly, another thing which De Zerbi is very strong about, consistently keeps defenders on the edge. The results are impressive. Brighton achieved their highest ever Premier League finish at 6th place and qualified for the Europa League for the first time, defeating giants like Liverpool, Chelsea and Arsenal along the way, all while spending significantly less than the other top teams. Brighton FC have become the blueprint for how a small club can punch above its weight. Their success isn't just about spending wisely, it's about creating a culture where data, scouting and tactical innovation all work in harmony. But as with any great story in football, there comes a turning point. After 2 groundbreaking seasons at Brighton, Roberto De Zerbi has moved on to a new challenge. leaving the club with the difficult task of finding his successor. Enter Fabian Hürzeler, a young and highly rated manager whose name has started to make waves in European football. Brighton's board, as always, acted decisively, bringing in Hürzeler as the man to carry the club into its next chapter. Also, something has changed. For the first time in years, Brighton's usually thrifty spending habits have been cast aside. The summer of 2024 saw Brighton spend a staggering $193 million in a transfer window, a record for the club by a wide margin. Big names and promising talents have arrived, signalling a significant shift in the club's approach. It's a far cry from the shrewd, data-driven bargain signings that defined the Moneyball era. So the question now is whether Brighton's rise can continue with this new, more ambitious strategy, or if the club risks losing its identity in the process. So what does this mean for Brighton? Is the Moneyball era built on finding undervalued talent and selling high truly over? Or is this simply the next stage in the club's evolution? One where smart spending is combined with an increased willingness to compete financially at the highest level. For a club that built its identity on efficiency and innovation, this shift raises questions. Can Brighton continue to defy the odds with a more traditional, big spending approach? And will Hürzeler be able to uphold the tactical and cultural examples set by De Zerbi and Graham Potter before him? One thing's for sure, Brighton have shown the football world that you don't need to be a big club to act like one. And as they move into this new era of increased expectations and financial muscle, the question now is, can they continue to thrive? Or will the principles that made Brighton a Premier League success story be lost in the process? Only time will tell, but for now, we can sit back and marvel at how far Brighton have come, from relegation battles to European adventures. This is Brighton's story, and it's just getting started.